Hello, my name is Aaron Kavanagh and I'm the founder and editor-in-chief of Post-Burnout.com. Post-Burnout.com is a culture website dedicated to venerating burnt-out artists the world over. This is our website's podcast where we publish full-length recordings of our interviews, which are sometimes the unedited versions of our site's articles and at other times are exclusives. If you're a returning listener, thank you for coming back, and if this is your first time listening, thank you for checking us out. We hope you enjoy and consider subscribing, giving the episodes a thumbs up if you're on YouTube, or giving it a rating if you're anywhere else. It really helps us out. Thank you. In this edition of Post-Burnout.com interviews, the longtime Canadian producer and musician Pete Mills discusses how he utilised his gothic project The Sweet Kill to eulogise friends of his that he lost during the COVID-19 pandemic on the band's second album Nowhere, which was released back in April. We also discuss the longevity of Romanticism and Gothicism, his career, his work with the punk band Flash Bastard, and them getting signed with Nikki Sixx's label Americoma, them getting kicked off Mötley Crüe and Scorpion's 1999 tour for being too disorderly, and much more. I also want to note that this interview was actually recorded back in March, which you'll understand if you listen to it, because we talk about the album coming out, and at the time I guess it didn't have a solid release date, so yeah, we're kind of discussing that. But it was released back in March and it's out now and it's available to stream and purchase and all that good stuff.
Hi, Aaron.
Hey Pete, it's nice to finally get to talk to you. I'm sorry about all the scheduling issues.
All good. We're all going through this journey and it's turbulent at times. And yeah,
perfect. Thanks very much for taking time. I won't take up too much of your time. I guess like the first thing I just want to ask, like I want to just get like a bit of a semblance of your background. I mean, like you've had like a very, I think, like impressive career. You've been you've been kind of going at it since the '80s at least, right? You've been doing like I know for example, you were with Flash Bastards. I was wondering, like, if maybe you could kind of give a bit of like I don't know, kind of a retrospective on your career and kind of how you kind of got into music and kind of how you got into engineering and production and all these things. Sorry, that's a hefty question to start
oh,
with.
it's beyond hefty. Yeah,
Yeah.
I appreciate the. I mean, it's one of those things where what I'm doing with The Sweet Kill is fresh and kind of like at this stage, like it's a full on operation. Yet, I can't help but give credence to the bands that I grew up in and how I cut my teeth as a performer and as a collaborator and as a singer. So like growing up really early on in life, I found a lot of dissatisfaction with things. I think intuitively as a kid growing up, I was attuned to the dysfunction of what I perceived to be called the world. So when I found music, it was my salvation, and it's literally that dramatic for me. Because without it, I think I would probably be locked up or dead, literally. And I'm not like exaggerating that. So that being said, coming into playing an instrument was a whole different experience because I was impressed. It was impressed upon me from my parents to like do something with your life, right? Other than like nothing. Playing with Legos was like my only like, enjoyment in Transformers. So it was a thing where if I was told to do it, I didn't want to do it rebelliously, and hence I joined a punk band when I decided for myself I wanted to play an instrument. And I had no idea after like 2 weeks of owning it that I'd join a band, but that's how I came into collaboration, rehearsals, jamming, and all that stuff. And that happened to be Flash Bastard, and that was at age 14. Fast forward 10 years, we got a really big break, and we ended up going from sold out club shows to playing arenas and stadiums and amphitheaters with the likes of Mötley Crüe. After 1.5 months of being on that tour, there was so much dysfunction and so much alcohol excessive imbibing that we got kicked off of that tour. And that sort of and like the thing was, we were already slated to do Howard Stern. We had the record already recorded, and I didn't like it. And for a part of me was thinking like, well, we spent all this money on this recording time and the studio time, and I just didn't like it. And why is that? So I started to kind of due to the turbulence of the band's dysfunctional relationship. I mean, it's like a 5-way marriage of absolute dysfunction. I decided to take somewhat of a control and charge of my life, which was, if I practice my craft as recording, maybe I might just be satisfied with the music that keeps me alive, that I happen to co-collaborate with and all that. So that sort of led down that path. And then throughout all of that dysfunction, I decided to start recording bands, and every band I recorded got a record deal. So I was really kind of on a roll for a minute right out of the gate, sort of like after 10 years of like toiling in obscurity with this band, all of a sudden we got a big break. Mm-hmm. And then the publicity of having been kicked off of such a magnanimous tour, it got so much attention, sort of, and that's sort of all of that momentum I sort of thrust into recording. And I joined when that band finally disbanded, I joined another band with a hairdresser who had a raspy voice. And 1 month after that, me and her wrote songs, we got a record deal. And it was really mind-blowing to be in the Svengali type position of being able to spot talents and mine it and then collaborate with it. And then we had some results. So that band lasted about a year and a half. Unfortunately, she took her life. And that's what kind of got me thinking that after all of this time of dealing with singers that are so turbulent and unpredictable, like, what if I was just to be the singer, and that way I can rely on the fact that I could A, show up to the rehearsal, B, show up to the show, and C, just be like a little bit more productive with and have more control of my art. So that's what bore into the necessity of having the Sweet Kill be a self-contained project where I do all the recording, writing, singing, and songwriting. And that kind of had a bit of a start. But then I moved to LA and I started to record for all these record labels because I had this like multifaceted skill set that I was able to actually do art, but also help others with their art and labels with their visions. So that sort of kind of got me a little bit, that went very hard. And so moving from Canada to America, let alone, is a big deal, but from like the humble beginnings of Vancouver to like the entertainment capital of the world was another story too. So all of that dynamic, I worked with so many singers and songwriters and like facilitating record labels' ideas and visions and creative collaborations, that I had a ton of songs that I had with co-writes with. And so a handful of them I used for the Sweet Kill material. Thus brings us to the second album that's about to be released. And I'm actually in the process of finishing the last song right now as we speak. And the minute it gets finished, I'm going to send it off to the label in Germany called Young and Cold, and they're going to start printing up the vinyl and the CDs, and I'm going to digitally release it like probably in the next 2 weeks. So that's sort of like I how much time does that
take?
It's
like such a quick turnaround, right? like just from going like still like in the process being like, yeah, I'll be out probably about 2 weeks.
Yeah, because it's just about the digital distributors getting it to all of the online social accounts, like the streaming accounts, and that's what the time frame is. I mean, if it could, some of them do really well, like they get it up to Spotify within a week, and I'm hoping that my digital distributor will do that. So the minute it's finished, the minute I upload it all.
Yeah, speaking from experience, Spotify seemed to be like the last one. You kind of get it everywhere else, and then Spotify's like last one. You're like, okay.
Yep.
So that's kind of the one you always wait for. Yeah, man. Like there's so much to go from there. Like, based on what you're saying, but like, I one thing I want to focus on then. So you kind of talked about that, like that transition to production. And the success you have from that. I was wondering, was that like a self-taught thing, or did you learn from other producers when you were in studio as a band member, or did you kind of get formally educated on that? What was your education in terms of production?
Well, I would say that I was formally educated, but it went in one ear out the other. I went to a school for 2 years, and the reason why I went to that school is because they gave you money. Like you get this massive student loan, you get all this money to live off of, and I was like, hell yeah. But the real reason I went to that school is because the second year program was that they gave you studio time. So the first year I just like whatever, I can't even remember what they taught me. I really like and then, but what I did is the second year I paid a producer by the hour out of my pocket of this like the TV show series The Office.
Yep.
Like I was the grunt in the warehouse,
Yeah.
and I literally was dating the receptionist. So it was like a odd little it was a fabric warehouse. It wasn't like a paper company, but it was the same exact dynamic. It was
Yeah.
like people up in the office area, and then there's the people down in the warehouse with the forklifts. And so I paid this producer out of my own pocket to record us, or to record me with my band Flash Bastard. And so it was, my goal was to get a record deal and get all that money back. And so I had an agreement. It wasn't signed or anything like that, but it was just like a verbal with my bandmates that, hey, if this actually goes somewhere, I'll get paid back what I put into it. Plus, I'll take my equal cut of whatever we get. So we got paid pretty good amount of money when we got our record deal with Flash Bastard. And so that was my formal training, was just being in the presence of that. And yes, most of my training and understanding is being hands-on in the studio as an artist, watching other producers do stuff, engineers do things, and experiment with stuff. So I had the privilege of being exposed to people like Mike Plotnikoff, Garth Richardson, Jamie Kosh, Dave Ogilvy. And these people have worked with the likes of Rage Against the Machine, David Bowie, Nine Inch Nails, Marilyn Manson, Bon Jovi, Mötley Crüe. So all of these people, I just kind of like watched what they did. And then I was like, oh, they use this mic on that guitar through that preamp, through this compressor. Okay, that makes sense. That's how hard could it be,
Yeah. Actually, I think the kind of cool thing is like, when you learn production. Actually, I think during COVID, a lot of people started getting into production because they had to out of like necessity. Well, I think it's like really cool is that when people see I don't know I think like musicians who kind of initially saw production as kind of like I don't know, just a mechanical means of getting your music recorded, now kind of see it as like an extension of the creative arm. And obviously they see, I think like now, it's kind of weird, like everyone's sort of doing the punk DIY thing, with through digital distribution. Everyone kind of has access to that. And everyone's kind of doing like zines, everyone has their own thing kind of going. And like now, like self-production, I think like is freeing up a lot of people. I mean, it seems like, obviously the Sweet Kill means like it's in that kind of like lineage where it's like, it seems like, complete creative control, complete kind of author driven sort of project that, you do just have kind of like the freedom to do what you want. With all that said, I mean, what kind of drove the direction of the Sweet Kills music? What kind of made you kind of want to do the kind of synthy kind of gothic music?
Well, growing up in a punk band that had a lot of glam tendencies, glam adjacent, if you will, I got exposed to a lot of music that I wasn't necessarily seeking, but I fell in love with. And then when that band parted, when we ended, I felt like I needed to like liberate myself. And in doing so, I just felt, when I met that woman who was a hairdresser, like she was kind of gothy. She was sort of new wavy, very fashion forward and very like extravagant. And I just did music that I felt like I wanted to do. And it would just naturally gravitate towards post-punk genre. And then during COVID, in the darkness of COVID, I really delved into gothic. Like I felt like I got, like, first of all, like COVID was like the lockdowns were like, what, like, that's what I do anyways. That's what I'm in the studio all day alone, in a cave, if you will, a man cave. And it was just like natural, like a part of my extension. But what I did do, due to like the everything being shut down, was I got really into like European literature, and really into the roots of, like, say, where my mom came from in Hungary, where my dad was born in England. And I got into the greats, the literary greats. And I found just naturally that the evolution from COVID lockdowns and my thirst for like Nabokov and Stanislav Lem and Andrei Tarkovsky movies, Dostoevsky, all that stuff sort of bled into what I'm writing right now. So it's like a natural progression, evolution from the devolution of society's experience with COVID lockdowns and all that.
Yeah, COVID seems to be like a really it's interesting. Like I'm talking to like a lot of artists still, and even though COVID's now like the lockdowns kind of started about 4 years ago now, we've kind of been out of them for geez, only about like maybe two fully. But I think, or maybe three. What I think is like kind of interesting is that like lockdown was kind of a time where it was sort of a time where a lot of people like ended their careers or like I can't do this, but it was also the time of a lot of growth. It's a weird kind of like I don't know, reset where a lot of people did kind of like start getting into new music. People did start kind of like exploring new
Mm.
ideas and kind of questioning things. And I think it killed a lot of great art, but it also kind of created too. It's just a very weird, I don't know, period of time, I guess.
Yeah, there was a lot of the mental health concept definitely took a nosedive, and I've had a lot of friends that overdosed or relapsed or ended up just like dying.
Mm.
Um, and then the other flip of it is that like there was a tremendous amount of expression and creativity that found that was coming from an organic, sincere place, obviously through realms like through avenues like TikTok or just general podcasts. I think people started to like want to get deeper into what is the meaning of this all if it can just be taken away like that. Um,
Mm.
and and yeah, I think it was a necessary thing. I'm sad that I look back at that time and a lot of close friends of mine that are no longer here because of excessive delving into the darkness of one's perceived affliction. Yeah, so it was a very interesting time, and I feel like grateful to be able to like talk about it in hindsight. I feel like that it is in the rearview mirror at this point.
Yeah. Like actually, so talking about Street Kill then, so your first album then came out in 2021, and sorry, first album with Sweet Kill. Obviously, as you mentioned earlier, you're kind of like gearing up towards your second one. Just to be correct, the title of the new one is Nowhere. Is that correct? That's what I have written.
Absolutely, because a lot of my friends that passed during the COVID times, this is for them. This is my experience of kind of questioning what the hell is this? Where are we all going, and where did we come from, and where are we now versus where we could be, and where do we go when we expire? And does the soul stay with the body, or does the soul transcend into some sort of ether, portal dimension, whatever? And that's what because during like the 2020 being in 2021, being on the second year of say COVID, right, like that experience, it was very, I wanted to celebrate the darkness of where my mind went and where a lot of people went. And that's what that, but the point of like the addressing or the initiating the in that realm is to create a conversation to kind of propose that there is a light, there is a purpose to it all, an underlying purpose, perhaps not maybe something that's so obvious, but something that one has to go through the dark night of their own soul to find. And so that's what the purpose of that album is. Yeah, it's dark, and there's a song called Heart Attack, and there's a song called Cold, and um but that being said, it's supposed to inspire, right, like a way, because like I've been through the darkness of my own dark night of my own soul, that I can navigate those waters for other people if need be, if they're so inclined. And therefore, once again, the next album is sort of similar in the sense that like I'm trying to propose a conversation, create and inspire. Like one friend of mine said to me, and I'll never forget this, he goes, design, the difference between design and art is that design is its goal and sole purpose is to create solutions to questions, whereas art is most purposeful when it creates questions.
Mhm.
So like as an artist, I want to ask questions for the listener, for the person who's on the other end of the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, and of course, I think that can be heard, like obviously your latest song, "Forbidden," which is second single to be released from the album. I assume this is going to be the final single before the album hits.
No, there's going to be one more, and it's
Okay.
coming out tomorrow. Um,
Okay.
and the story behind Forbidden is this singer of Flash Bastard and I were in a mode in LA after things had sort of time healed some wounds and amends were made. We were writing with so many people, and we had one executive from Capitol Records come by our studio when we were writing with this Swedish pop star, and he was just impressing upon me this idea that songwriters have no idea that there's a song hidden in a shoebox under the bed. And so that song Forbidden was a shoebox in a shoebox under the bed. So my idea to resurrect that song, because it had a moment, it had some time where people were sync uh music supervisors and sync agencies were interested in placing it, but it never got placed. So it ended up being in a shoebox under the bed. And so I resurrected it for the sole purpose to breathe new life into it, and I completely literally rewrote it. And the timing of the rewrite of it came with the passing of the singer of Flash Bastard. So that's one of the catalysts to the album being entitled Nowhere. And so I wrote, as a result of that experience, I was very emotional and very distraught and sad and grieving the loss of somebody I've known for a long time. I wrote a couple songs about our relationship and my perception and perspective on his situation that he was in that led to his passing. And so that's a big motivation for the album Nowhere. But yeah, there's one more single coming out, and that's a song called Queen, and it should drop tomorrow if the digital distribution all works out.
Do you want to talk about that song then, so I could update the article then to reflect this song?
Say that again, sorry.
Would you like to talk about the new song Queen?
Absolutely. It was another song that ended up under the bed that I wrote a while ago. And I always liked the first lines of it. I just didn't know how to summarize it. The first lines are, I don't need anyone, got no time for love. I'm cool with life so cold, my blackened heart of stone. I always liked those lines, and I just never found like, well, what does that mean? And like, where is this going? And so what I ended up doing is the catalyst for finishing the song was going, well, if I'm so dark and gloomy and doomy, maybe I just need a mate who's as doomy and gloomy as me. And maybe that doom and gloom collaboration could turn into a unification vision of king and queen, like and of the darkness, so to speak. So, reading some dark literature like Dracula and Frankenstein. I sort of called it Queen of the Damned. Now the song's called Queen because I don't want to give it all away, but that's what I rewrote it and got the vision and lyrics together to then inspire enough to, and the video is coming with that as well. So the video is going to come out a little later because right now it's in the process of being edited, and it's pretty all encompassing. There's a lot of, I don't want to give it away, but it's a unique approach. Like most videos that I've done thus far involve like high def cameras and cool locations. This is cool locations, high def cameras, but it's also taking a lot of AI and
Yep.
a lot of like creative approaches to it. So I don't want to give too much away, but I'm very excited to release it. But the single's coming out tomorrow, and I'm really happy to have that be the last single before the album drops. I'm sure there might be one more single after the album drops, but I wanted to sort of give a little bit of a, like since October 31st, Halloween last year, there's been two singles and now there's going to be a third. So I just wanted to sort of draw it out as much as I can.
Yeah, actually, I want to ask because you were kind of like mentioned there the kind of like a gothic but romantic kind of element. I think like it's still such like as an aesthetic, but also I think like the ideas of Gothicism, the ideas of Romanticism as it kind of initially existed. I think first of all they've historically I think gone together like so well. And I think it's still something that like really resonates and permeates with people. It's something that no matter what kind of art movement has come along in the 20th century and now the 21st century, it still, I don't know, kind of resonates in some way. Like people just, even if it's like a little trinket here and there, even if it's like a little idea or expression here and there, it's still something that kind of like, permeates through the centuries. I was wondering for you, I mean, what do you think the draw of kind of like Gothicism and kind of Romanticism is in the modern day, at least for you?
It I always like to trace things back to their roots, and I've found always being fascinated with the birth of America and the need to leave Europe to create a new world. And I think that's how Dracula got over to America from Romania. It was on a ship. So this epic travel through uncertain elements and getting through all that, there's this element of like needing to, if I'm gonna die, I'd like to be not alone. And the idea of the tragedy and the romanticism of Frankenstein, like I find it so appealingly romantic because it's Dracula just wants to be with somebody forever. Isn't
Mhm.
that what the initial infatuation stages of all of my relationship initially started off, with that intention and that goal in mind? And is this the one? And that's what everyone asks anyone anyways when they're in a new relationship, is, do you think this is the one? And everyone's very hopeful.
Yeah.
Time will tell, as Dracula has suffered. um, but that to me, these stories are just so, I don't know, especially Master and the Margarita, like that to me really broke open some new avenues of expression, and inspiration. I mean, that led to expression. So yeah, I always find being drawn, like when I just recently came back from Pennsylvania, and that's like a lot of people say the birthplace of America. I've spent some time in Boston, and I really felt the forefathers of this country bleeding through my veins, pumping through my veins. I've never, being in Canada, growing up in that culture, and being completely rebellious to any and all scholastic endeavors, I didn't pay attention to history at all. I was very focused on music, and that was it. I knew that's what I wanted to do at a very young age, so I never really bothered to go to college and go down that route of education. It just wasn't on the table.
Mhm.
So now that I'm in America for as long as I've been, I'm somewhat interested in the birth of this country, but also like, well, why was there a necessity for the birth of this country? What was going on in Europe at the time? And I find like, well, I'm a first generation Canadian. My parents were both born in Europe. I might as well, like, I feel connected to any and all castles. I feel some sort of passionate connection and intuitively being drawn to that. You're from Ireland, right?
Yep.
So
Dublin. Yeah.
like just, I've never been, and I really want to go. And I've never visited. Like when I went to London, I visited family, but I didn't do the touristy stuff as much, and I kind of wish I did, but I hopefully next time. And I'd love to visit your country, and I want to just get more imbued. I feel called to the edge of a cliff with a sword, like fighting the dragon. Like
You can
I just
definitely do that
want.
here.
Exactly.
Yeah. Dude, that's been like that was perfect. I mean, I think I've asked everything I want to ask. The only final thing I just want to ask is yeah, so the new album's coming out pretty soon. Just in general, I mean, like what how do you find that this new album kind of differs from your first release?
The first release was playing with my voice as a using it as a dark instrument. Like, there's a dark synth sound you can get to kind of create that cold shiver, that
Yeah.
that desolation, that solemnity. And that was me for the first time being proud of experiencing my voice as an instrument rather than trying to hit the notes. Because singing to me came later in life. It wasn't the first thing I grew up out of the bed. A lot of people's like have see photos or videos of talent shows when someone's 6 years old singing or whatever. Like that never was me. I just knew music. I passionately was drawn to it, but I wasn't compelled to be a singer until I was thwarted with so many turbulent lead singers that I thought I might as well become one myself. Get closer to more productivity was the goal. Then I became turbulent and whatever. But that's the irony of it all. But this next album is coming off of the heels of that confidence being to see how much further I could push it. So I think that everything I do moving forward is about how farther I can push all of my dark limits that that I'm just when I see when there's a limit, I don't get afraid and go, oh, I'm so limited. I go, well, how can I push that further? And so I'm doing that in my view with this next album, is coming off of the heels of the confidence of delivering my voice on a way that is dark, gothic, and using it as an instrument, and then coming further into like how far can I push that further. And sonically speaking too, like there's a little bit more, I think, cinematicness to it. My goal in life always has been taking the Cure's album Disintegration and amalgamating it with, say, the soundtrack of Blade Runner 2049.
Yeah.
And updating it with the modern technology, obviously with 2049, but keeping that simplicity and that minimalness, but it's super theatrically cinematic, and then taking the elements of absolute theatrical cinema, the sound design of cinematic Hans Zimmer type energy, and so that's, I think, more that goal has been more achieved with Nowhere.
Perfect. I'm sorry, I know I said I wouldn't take you too long. I just have one more question I just wrote down. You were kind of mentioned there something that I thought was quite interesting, where you were saying that when you were in school, you didn't really have kind of like endeavors towards kind of what the teachers were kind of or what the curriculum was dictating. But like as you kind of grew older, you wanted to do it. Just out of genuine interest, just out of genuine curiosity. I relate to that, and I think like a lot of people who are in kind of creative fields relate to that. I was wondering, do you think that I don't know, for someone who is like kind of creatively inclined, do you think I don't know, autodidactism is the only way to go? Like people will only learn if they have a genuine interest, if they're the ones who are kind of the catalyst for that learning themselves? Or is that too lofty a question?
No, I mean, I think that whenever the student is ready, a teacher will appear. And my teacher came to me in the form of a spiritual advisor, and that was very key in order for me to get over my own insecurities and doubts and fears and anxieties regarding what it was that I was doing. He was able to provide a sense of grounding for me that gave me more confidence, because I'm pretty confident, but it gave me the necessary confidence, and it directed and focused the confidence to do what I felt was the next right move. And everything I've done up until this point is just a series of 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 1 step, 2 steps back, 1 step forward, but just perpetually trudging along a path, knowing that this is bigger and beyond me. This isn't my album. This is me being a channel for the album. And I think Keith Richards from the Rolling Stones is very there's this one quote he said, obviously like a painter has a blank canvas, a poet has a blank piece of paper, a musician has silence. And then there's another quote of Keith Richards saying that every time you pick up your instrument, you're going fishing, and you better do it more often than not, because that song you're trying to fish is going to go to the next guy. So I just feel blessed and grateful to have fished enough to find this next body of work. These next 12 songs have been just me trying to fish for something outside of myself. So I don't take credit for it, but I do acknowledge that I have been a channel for it. So the formality of having a thing on my wall, a diploma, is not necessary for me to be productive in art. I even that diploma I did get from that 2 years, even though I don't remember anything, is doing nothing for me today. I'm not saying don't stay in school if you are in school. I'm not saying don't ever try to go for school. If you feel called to do something, do it. A lot of my scholastic proclivities have been in the realm of self-interest, self-initiation, for the better good for you. That has been always the objective. It's not about how great I am and what I can do and how much I can learn. It's more about like, how can I make the best sounding song possible? And then that turns into, how can I make the best body of work possible? Then it becomes like focused, and it's okay, this song would be good after this song, and then the order of the album goes in a certain way to make it be an experience if one is so inclined to sit there when they get it from start to finish and delve into the cinematic epicness of it. Some people like don't have the time to do that, so they just listen to a song at a time, and that's fine too. Each song is its own movie. But this is like a decalogue, if you will.
Perfect. Thanks very much for your time, Pete, man. It's really great talking with you.
Right on, Aaron.
Thank you very much, man. And best of luck with the album, man. I think it's going to do really well. What I've heard so far, it's like, it is like you were saying, it is like cinematic and theatric, and it is like, yeah, I mean, I think like you said way better than I could have, where it is just that kind of like, I don't know, it feels like a kind of epic, and I can't wait to hear the thing in full, and especially in the kind of order that you kind of like dictated. So, I'm looking forward to it when it comes out.
Do you have a record player?
I do, yeah.
Oh yeah, we got some vinyl being printed up, so it was so much fun to just do the vinyl, because it's like, what's going to be the end of side one? What's going to be the beginning of side two?
That's what I think of now when I have records. Yeah,
there's so much, because growing up listening to albums, not singles, or having Spotify as a streaming service, I always felt that there was this unspoken, like, this is done for a reason. It's not just random. So yeah, it was very fun to experience that, for revealing it in this way. So yeah.
The track listing is kind of like how an author, places the chapters in a certain sequence, so.
Absolutely.
Thanks, man. Thanks very much, and enjoy the rest of your day. It's been really nice talking with you.
Yeah, it's 8:00 over there, right? You're in the nighttime?
Yeah, it's 7:30 now.
Oh, okay. Okay, cool. Well, if you could send me the link whenever this gets thrown out, I'll put it up online and, promote it.
Perfect, man. Thanks very much for your time.
You got it, Aaron. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to that episode of Post-Burnout.com interviews. We're an independent venture run by yours truly, and as I said at the beginning, liking, rating, subscribing, and sharing really helps us out a lot. If you're feeling extra generous, we do have a PayPal donation link in the episode description, but don't feel obligated, of course. We've also begun releasing occasional exclusive episodes on Spotify, so subscribe there if you'd be interested in hearing those. Thanks again for listening, and see you next time.